I'm going to be talking about some work that we did for the Pocklington Trust, which is a sight loss charity in the UK, and thinking about daylighting for partially sighted people. And this is an important group in society. It's estimated around 3% of people have severe sight loss, and many of us in this room will develop some sort of sight defect as we get older. Sight loss can take a range of forms. Some of these affect the central vision of the eye, such as macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy. And this loss of central vision can be very disabling. Other types affect different parts of the visual field. For example, retinal detachment can affect certain parts of the visual field, and also glaucoma can affect the peripheral field. And because of this, there's no one particular solution, no universal design solution to designing for daylight for people with sight loss, because some people may require lots and lots of light, but other people may be very sensitive to glare, and this can be an issue. However, in general, it's found that more light does help the partially sighted, provided that's controlled and diffused. However, that amount of light is rarely found in the homes of people with partial sight. For example, in a study by Silver, he found that people actually needed around 1,200 lux. But in their homes, they actually had only 180 lux. Daylight can help here by providing very high levels of light near to the window, so that it's possible for people to go to the window when they have a particular visual task. And often it's more comfortable and easier for people to have high levels of lighting from daylight rather than some sort of giant spotlight somewhere that can itself cause glare and shadowing. And so in design, it's necessary to improve daylight by having higher average daylight factors, typically in the 3 to 5% range. And also, not just in living rooms and bedrooms, but also in kitchens and bathrooms, where it's often not provided in much modern housing. Because these are the areas where partially sighted people will be doing critical visual tasks like preparing food or shaving or applying makeup. Sadly, in large developments, the disabled unit is often on the ground floor and heavily obstructed by other parts of the building and by perhaps balconies above it, and so effectively useless as far as a partially sighted person is concerned. Contact with the outside is particularly important for partially sighted people. Some people can see large objects like trees or buses or other buildings, and so for them the view has interesting visual content. But even completely blind people still value this contact with the outside. It's possible for them to hear what's happening outside and to be able to tell whether it's cold or warm outside. And this asymmetry in either the thermal or acoustic field enables them to orient themselves within a room, so to be able to tell where the windows are just by the different sounds and the variation in temperature. However, this contact with the outside can also cause privacy issues at times when perhaps people can be conscious that they can't see somebody outside, but potentially somebody outside could see them. The colour of daylight also has an input to people with partial sight. Daylight's bluer than typical electric light sources, and this may decrease contrast for those with cataracts, but improve it for those with macular degeneration. And also, as Victoria was saying, the blue light in daylight also helps reset circadian rhythms. And this is particularly important for people with partial sight, because their eyes are less adapted to providing the signals which can reset the body clock. And so high illuminances, and particularly from blue light, are particularly important for people with partial sight. The variation in daylight, both temporal and spatial, adds interest to a space. Partially sighted people may particularly value the spatial variation in daylight because they can take a test of a window if they need extra light, or alternatively to relax in the darker areas of the room. However, it's important to avoid excessive contrast, both between the dark and light areas of a room, but also in terms of sequences of spaces. Many partially sighted people can have problems adapting from the bright outside to darker spaces indoors. It can take them perhaps 5 to 10 minutes to adapt. And so it's a good idea to have buffer spaces to help them adapt so that the daylight goes down from the very high levels outdoors into an intermediate level and through to the living areas, which may be significantly darker. It's also important to avoid internal spaces that are fully glazed, such as streets or staircases, because that can cause adaptation problems for people when they go into other rooms. Glare is a particular problem for partially sighted people. It's essential to be able to control incoming sunlight and to avoid reflective surfaces, particularly reflective floors. Reflections in the floor can cause glare, but they can also be mistaken for perhaps water on the floor or other objects, edges of objects, which may cause issues for people trying to move around. Often people with partial sight prefer to sit away from facing away from the window, so it's a good idea to provide furniture so that they can sit by the window but facing away from it. And to avoid windows in opposite walls, because then they don't really have any particular orientation they can sit in without getting direct glare from a window. And in this modern age, people with partial sight may well be using large computer screens to help them to read or communicate. And so it's important to avoid reflections in those. Blinds are usually better than curtains at providing this controlling glare. But it's still not known whether horizontal blinds or vertical blinds are the most appropriate for partially sighted people. And that might be a nice student project for somebody to do, to find that out. So in conclusion, there's no one solution for partially sighted people. The needs of different partially sighted people differ. However, daylight is an important illuminant because it can give these high light levels and also an even spread of light, which can be very helpful. The variation of daylight adds interest and enables people to maintain their circadian rhythms. It also allows contact with the outside. However, daylight and sunlight can cause glare, which needs to be controlled by appropriate shading devices. Thank you.